Episode 73, Limitless Movie and Book Review.
You're listening to the Visionary and Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So, switch on your brain and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the podcast, listeners. In this episode, I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite and what I consider to be a definitely underrated movie, Limitless, with Bradley Cooper. This is based on a book. We'll get to that in a minute. But on this episode, we have a returning guest, a special friend of mine, Daniel Walczak.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Last episode with you was a hit. It was so enjoyable. And I feel like anything audiobook related, I need to turn to you.
I like it.
So this movie, when did you originally see it? Did you see it when it came out, or did it take a while for you to get to it?
I definitely got to it early on. I don't think it was in theaters, though. I probably got it on DVD, like pre-Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think it was the same for me. I remember seeing it pretty early on. It came out in 2010. And man, I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was hooked. Like, I was just like, what a cool idea. I'm not promoting any drug use, but I've never considered a drug that can enhance your mental abilities like the one presented in the book and the movies. And I just love how Bradley Cooper acts. I love him as an actor. Very enjoyable, very good actor. And the whole movie was very exciting, very on the edge of your seat,
Yeah, definitely. Everything except the infinite zoom.
Yeah, I was on the edge of my seat falling off of it because I had motion sickness.
Yes.
I had some vertigo from their vertigo effect. Yeah. We'll talk about that later on as to how they achieved that ridiculously trippy zoom effect on the intro. And also there's I think 2 or 3 times in the movie where they do some really weird zoom stuff.
Yep.
And infinite copying and stuff. So that was really well done. And I'll explain how that's done later. So this movie, Limitless, with Bradley Cooper is, like I said, based on a book. The book is, however, called The Dark Fields. It was released in 2001. The author's name is Alan Glynn, and he's an Irish lad.
I found out that there's a sequel.
Ooh!
What? Who knew that? Nobody knew that.
With all my digging and research on this movie and book, I am surprised I didn't find that out myself. I am very intrigued, and I hope there's an audiobook of it.
I don't think they make books without audiobooks now, right? Those come standard.
Right.
But yeah, so this is called Under the Night by Alan Glynn. And it is oh, wow. So I've got it up on Amazon and I'm reading a little bit of the description. It says both a sequel and a prequel to Alan Glynn's classic debut. So I'm now I have to read this book, even if it's not an audiobook. With a description like that, how can you not?
Yeah, I'm pausing all my audiobooks right now, and I'm going to find this and try to get it.
Oh yes,
that's cool. Maybe it's going to take us back to the 80s, maybe even MK Ultra. Who knows?
Whoa,
so many possibilities. So that's the book. The movie, like I said, came out in 2011. I said 2010 earlier. 2011 is when it came out. The movie director is Neil Berger, who also directed Insurgent and The Illusionist. Very good movies. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize his name, but now I feel bad. The writer is Leslie Dixon, and the adaptation was done by Alan Glynn himself, which is really intriguing. Like, if I was an author of a book that got a big Hollywood, movie, I would love to be involved with the adaptation process, wouldn't you?
I would. I feel like I would want to keep it so tight to the actual book. As we'll get into a little bit further on, we'll find that there are substantial differences between the two. And knowing that Alan Glynn was a part of that process actually helps me reconcile it a little bit. It makes me a little bit more okay with it.
Yeah, I feel bad when a great, indie or underrated book gets turned into a high budget movie and it's changed so much. Because in the typical situation, the writers, the directors, the producers, mostly the writers, come up with all their wild ideas that'll get more attention, more money, and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And they just butcher the book and they make what they want to be a money-making machine. And I just feel bad for the little old author that maybe got some kind of payment, some check, some royalty. But what happened to their story, But that doesn't seem to be the case here. The author himself apparently changed stuff. Which is I'm okay with because it's his story.
Absolutely.
There's no pity. All right. So before we get into the spoilers and the nitty gritty of the book versus the movie, what is your star rating? And let's actually use some MDT pills out of the book, not the NZT from the movie, but out of 5 MDT pills, how many pills do you give this movie?
So the MDT from the book, I give it a solid 4. 4 MDT pills, which is, if you're not on MDT already and kind of worked up to it, you'll overdose. So don't take that many right off the bat. Kind of ease yourself into it. On the NZT, the movie pills, I think it's more closer to a 4.5. I really enjoyed seeing the book fleshed out, even, and that sounds backwards, but the book didn't flesh out certain parts, and I liked the way that the movie did it. In certain circumstances. So
movie's better than the book?
The movie's better than the book. Watch out, people.
That's unheard of. For the book, out of 5 MDT pills, scraped out of a shady garage lab, I will... I'll give it, I don't know, I'm going to say 4 as well. I'm going to say 4.5. I thoroughly enjoyed the book.
Good.
I recognize some of your problems, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about them later. So I can't give it a 5. But yeah, 4.5 for the book. And the movie, man, it was just a nonstop fun ride. So I'm going to give it a 5. This is definitely a movie that I would not mind rewatching multiple times.
Yep. I can get on board with that.
Yeah, and it's almost, I want to downvote it a little bit because I know what the book has, but just pretending I never read the book, yeah, the movie would stay at 5. Mm-hmm. 5 NZT pills.
5 NZT.
Yeah. So, which do you prefer as far as story and the development of things, movie or book?
So I like a darker story, and the book has the dark story. I think like. In that sense, I prefer the book, but there's a certain part of being able to see the reaction, from the NZT in the movie that you are that is just really, really cool, and you don't get that cool factor in the same way from the book, and I don't think it's a lack of imagination on my part. I'm not willing to take the blame for that. There's just a little bit of maybe Alan was a little bit younger in his writing career, where like the actual writing wasn't quite fleshed out in a way that it is. And I mean, this is the movie adaptation was 10 years after the book, so. I feel like there was a lot of time to refine that idea and for Alan to grow as an author.
He got a second
writer.
chance.
He really did.
Lucky him.
And the way that they put that into film, I really liked it. So there are a couple different pieces there, but if I'm going just by story alone, I like a dark story, so I would choose the book.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with the book too. There's just so much more there that the movie is kind of shallow as far as the origins of things. The book goes back decades and decades. Not a whole lot, but there's at least a few breadcrumbs laid down where you can kind of get a gist of an idea. And there's still enough mystery to keep you going and wanting more. So to just spilling all the beans,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's that. So this is your spoiler warning past this point. I am not sorry for what we say because you've been warned. All right, so I don't really have a perfect way to go through this because I've never done an episode where we get to review a book and a movie, the connected adaptations. And I'm super excited about it because I've always been super intrigued by the art of adapting a book into a movie. Always intrigues me. And it really started when the Narnia movies were announced because growing up, I hated reading. I never read stuff. Book assignments were just, I would skip a page. I'd read every other page just to get through it.
Yep.
I remember doing that specifically on my mother's bed when I was homeschooled. It didn't go over well.
No.
And and that was a Phantom Tollbooth. Not a bad book, but still, I just didn't like reading. So when Narnia movies were announced, I remember my mom always trying to just kind of nudge me towards the reading thing. She's like, your older brother loved those books, and he was like the cool old brother, the black sheep of the family. I'm thinking, you know what? If Michael liked these books, they should be awesome. So I took the plunge, and before the movie came out, I managed to read the second book, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Then the movie came out, and it was so cool knowing knowing better, knowing the original, and then seeing a really great film adaptation on screen. And then after that, I like that summer, I read the rest of that year afterwards, I read all the 6 other books. And so ever since then, I try my best to, if I have time and if I have the heads up, to read a book before a movie comes out and enjoy them both for what they are. All that to say, let's talk about the movie first.
Perfect.
So some weird things that I noticed was that this movie opens on what looks like a suicide attempt. It jumps forwards in the story. We kind of not a flash forwards, I guess, right? And he's on the ledge, and the Russians are breaking into his fancy door, and he just almost slips. He's thinking about just jumping off, and it's weird because that's how the movie starts, but the book ends with a suicide. Now, listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt strongly that he got those pills to off himself. After he writes his memoir of everything he did, good and bad, and all the truth about the drugs and the danger stuff, he had this thing of pills. And I mean, it sounded like suicide pills. But yeah, so interesting little reversal there between movie and book. And did you catch that weird line in the opening of the movie narrative where it says, "What kind of guy without a drug or alcohol problem looks this way?"
Yeah.
And he's like, definitely an addict to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And in the book, he's literally was an addict to cocaine, I think, to say the least, and obviously alcohol as well. And man, there is so much stimulant drug use in the book. Cigarettes everywhere, alcohol everywhere.
Yeah.
The pill. I'm like, dude, this is a druggy book in various forms.
And well, it's interesting because I think one of the major differences in the book and the movie is that the drug use is consistent, and then the alcohol use is consistent throughout the whole book, as if it doesn't affect the NZT at all. So I thought that was interesting. And in the movie, you kind of see him tapering off of all alcohol use and putting cigarettes down and everything like that. So it does kind of come across as a little bit of a drug user's book.
Man, so many drugs. Specifically one drug, but there's other drugs too. And there's of course cocaine.
Oh yeah,
forgot about that one. That little one. So when I started the movie again, I finished the book, and then I think that a few days later, I sat down. I had an evening to myself, which never happens, and I'm like, all right, I'm watching Limitless. This is going to be great because the book was fresh in my mind. I was taking notes as I watched the movie. I'd pause it, write down stuff for this episode, and go back. I forgot that Melissa, like starting the movie, I'm thinking, I don't remember him having an ex-wife. I think they left that out. And then I'm like, that she's there. I forgot about her.
Scene.
Yeah, pretty quick. Yeah. And I thought it was Kate from Lost. I was like, oh, Kate from Lost. Cool. And then I went back. I'm like, oh wait, that's not her. It looked like her in the opening little flashback scene. Another thing that stuck out to me was that classic line, although they changed it. They said, there's a line where it goes, you know how they say we can only access 20% of our brain? And I'm like, wait, the line is 10%. And that's not actually even right.
Yeah.
That's been proved wrong by brain scans, for goodness sake. We use our brain. We use much more of our brain than that. Brain scans are, you can see them. But that was weird how they changed an already wrong line to make it even wronger.
So much wrong.
Yep. And and the inflation thing. So in the book, the pills are $500 each, right?
Yeah.
And then in the movie, it's $800. I'm like, whoa, hey.
They did these minor little changes that just drove me nuts because I'm kind of an attention to detail kind of guy.
Yes,
and it went from 500 to 800. I think in the movie it was he hadn't seen Vernon in 10 years, and in the book it was 9.
Yeah.
The pills were white in one and clear in the other.
That's right. And his last name.
What? Yeah. Spinola versus Mora. I'm just why these little changes? And I don't think that that's an Allen change. Those kind of changes are the ones that make me think this was like the director or the writers were just like, oh yeah, 800's more impressive per pill than 500. This is 2011, people.
Yeah. Man, the inflation on the streets is rough.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. Some small things, like the drugs are in the oven in the movie. It was weird. Like,
that's my favorite.
It was clever though, because he's talking about cooking, and I thought that was kind of funny. They talked about the guy, he's always ordering takeout.
And in the book, one of the things that bothered me was how did the guy that was digging through the house not find it? Like, it didn't really take Eddie that long to find it himself.
Yeah.
So
that was...
as Alan's like re-looking at his book and getting a second chance, he's like, maybe we should come up with something more creative, you know?
Yeah. He's like, that was a bit of a jump. He just saw the loose panel and boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in the movie, there's some really cool fight scenes, and he remembers kung fu from watching Bruce Lee movies. So anytime an intense scene happened with the Russians in the books, I'm like, all right, fight scene. And it never happened.
No fighting. There's no violence in the whole thing.
I'm like, dude, if I was hyper, whatever, mentalist, these skills, I would totally like use that for martial arts.
Totally.
Because reactions and knowledge and, reading people's bodies, that would be like perfect. I would just do cage fighting and just totally whoop everyone, assuming I was in shape for it. But
surprise question. What would be your movie of choice, fighting movie to instant recall to learn extreme martial arts?
Oh, man. Jason Bourne, maybe, because it's more realistic.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I was thinking Kung Fu Panda.
That's a good one too. I was going for realism, but I mean, my favorite martial arts movie has got to be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think running on the tops of bamboo trees is going to help me much on the street. So,
Jason Bourne works.
I have to go with Jason Bourne.
Yep.
Let's see. So this has really bugged me. In the movie, NZT grants you perfect memory recall, but that was not the case in the book.
It was not. It was more of just the kind of a heightened sense. You could recall things a lot better and pull stuff in, but it wasn't this perfect memory, fancy super recall, like superpower is kind of what it comes across in the movie.
Yeah, definitely. And I like it. He never really touches on this aspect of psychology and the human brain, but I feel like he was really cashing in on the fact that the human brain is made to recognize patterns. Mm-hmm. And that's what MDT in the book really helps him with, is he's seeing patterns in the stock changes and the money's up and down. And he can recall details from research papers that he read that help him with, predictions of financial stuff. But it's like it helps you remember and piece together puzzles and bits of patterns and things like that. He does it in the movie too, but the author never like wrote about the fact that, hey, human brains are wired to get, patterns and stuff. And this drug just increases that ability. I don't know.
It would have been nice to have a little bit of science behind it, a little bit of psychology behind it.
Yeah.
I would have liked that.
Something.
I think that just speaks to the slightly unfleshed out content in the book, where you could have really added a lot more in certain places.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that would have added a little bit to the narrative of what the drug does and why he's able to do these things that he can do. Mm-hmm. So when Kevin, which is one of the financial broker guys, when Kevin first comes on screen with Eddie, I thought it was like a chubby Ryan Reynolds for some weird reason. I don't know. You just need to look him up. And next time you see that first scene where I think they're in a restaurant or something, and you see the Kevin dude, he looks like a fat Ryan Reynolds.
I am gonna have to rewatch the movie now and keep my eye out for chubby Ryan Reynolds.
I had to do a double take. I was like, wait, what?
But you also thought Melissa was the chick from Lost, was it? I'm not fully trusting the point. Your facial recognition skills are in question at this point.
Maybe I've got that mental disorder. I can't recognize faces. I am awful with actors. Mostly it's like the actor's name. I can't remember names with faces, but I can recognize faces. Mm-hmm. At least I think I can. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're recognizing patterns in faces.
Oh, hey, maybe I'm on a drug. You don't know.
Who can say?
Here's something weird I found when I was looking at the casting for the movie. There is a actress called Caroline Winber, and she plays Maria Winber in the movie. Same last name. I don't know why. Very strange.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, she is the beautiful blonde that Eddie kills in the hotel room. She has a really small part in the movie, at least visually. But again, okay, here I think there's something wrong with my brain. But I thought that was the actress who played Six in Battlestar Galactica. And I'm like, hey, it's her, number 6. And so I looked at it, I was like, okay, it's not Six, it's Caroline Winber, but she's playing Maria Winber.
I
and I
feel
had a
like
little.
that's 3 facial recognition fails in
Yeah,
one movie.
there's something wrong. There's
Yep.
something wrong with me. It's official. You have helped me discover. I need to go to WebMD and see that I have an alien infection that's causing a brain cancer,
Wow.
and I'm going to die in 3 hours. That's probably
I
what's going to tell me.
Now I'm depressed.
That's WebMD for you.
Yep.
The leading cause of hypochondria.
Yeah. So on the note of the blonde who Eddie kills, it
Mhm.
kind of upset me is the wrong word, but on like a social injustice level, they whitewashed her. In
Yeah, she was Spanish, right?
yeah, she was from Mexico and she was
Yeah,
43 years old,
yeah.
and they took her into. I mean, it looked like she might have been in her late 20s or early 30s, white with
A
blonde hair,
supermodel.
supermodel, and
Yeah,
I'm like, come on
yeah.
now. That again, that is one of those the director or the designers in the movie. I don't know what the term
Mhm.
is. Took charge on that one. I feel like
Yeah.
there's no point to changing that.
One scene that I thought that was really genius as far as intensity and surprise was again, we're talking about the movie right now primarily. We're going to switch over to the book later,
I can't
but
handle
that
it.
scene in that scene in the movie where he's outside sitting on a park bench and he finally gets the black book and he calls a phone number in the book, and the dude that's been following him sitting behind him, his phone rings. Oh, that was great because I think he suspected this creepy dude is following him, and now it's like 110% sure not only is this guy been following him, but he's in the book. And so I'm in trouble. I just thought
hmm
that was like cinematic genius right there. A very small thing, but I thought it was very effective.
No, it was a good
Um,
moment. It was a good moment.
and I also like the scene, which again is not in the book, but in the movie, he he forces his girlfriend over the phone to take one of the pills to escape getting killed by the creepy guy.
Yeah.
That was cool. Like, hey, someone else got the drug finally, right?
Yeah, but then she doesn't
Um,
like it. What's the point of that?
but she used a freaking kid as a weapon.
That was brilliant.
What? I guess I think it's kind of terrible. Like, let me just steal your daughter and swing her at a killer with a knife. Oh my
Like
gosh, you kidding me?
she's all the way across the park. There are apparently no other things that are usable weapons
Right?
nearby, and you run over to the
Yeah.
ice skating rink. You take the little
To
girl and
use
you
a child.
swing her behind you for her ice skate. It's just,
Couldn't you have
how do you even contrive that?
couldn't you have found some spare like ice skates laying around and just like, I don't know.
Anything. The hot cocoa
Yeah.
at the stand nearby. I don't
Oh,
know.
hey.
I don't know.
I think you're on a little NZT.
Oh, hey.
This annoyed me was that he did need the dextrin, which is from the books,
Mhm.
to counteract the intense migraines and eventual death.
Yeah.
He didn't need anything. He was fine. I think he took over the counter drugs a few times, and he was just dandy.
Well, I
No
think
more
the big
blackouts.
difference was in the movie. Instead of introducing this secondary over the counter drug,
Yeah.
he stopped drinking alcohol and smoking
Mm.
cigarettes and
Yeah, he
everything
cleaned
like
up his
that.
act.
Yeah,
Yeah, he cleaned up his little lifestyle, and he was just fine.
I think it was if he
Um,
ate food and didn't drink alcohol, then there were no blackouts. I think that's what
yeah,
that translated to. But I really
yeah.
liked the concept of having a balancing drug. I thought that was a
hmm
much, I don't know, much more
And the way that
elegant
he
way.
gets that information in the book is cool because he finally reaches a living survivor who herself is really suffering, but she remembers. Oh no, she's like neurologically damaged from the drug use in the past, right?
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, there's dextrin. It's an over the counter drug, but it's the only thing that will keep you going or whatever. So I thought that was a cool little inside information. He finally reaches the survivor and gets that from her, and it saves his life.
Yeah. Definitely
Um,
pretty cool.
we don't have that inside information in the movie. I was also waiting in the book for him to finally hire or reverse engineer the drug. He never
hmm
even talks about it, right?
No,
He's trying to
it's
find
not
the
even on his
source.
radar. Yeah, he tries to
Yeah,
find the
which is
source, but that's it.
totally like, come on, guys, that's like half the solution. And I thought for sure with his heightened intelligence and plotting and scheming, like he would maybe learn chemistry and then try to like do analysis and break this thing apart and make his own.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even considered the fact that he could have just done that himself. Like he went from
hmm
zero stock market knowledge whatsoever to the best trader in the world in a day.
Yeah.
But he
Well,
couldn't.
you know what? I take it back halfway. I take half of it back because in the very end, before he could commit suicide in the hotel room, what did he purchase from the bookstore? Books on neurology and brain chemistry. So I
Oh,
think
maybe he was
he
trying.
was Yeah, I think he was heading that direction, but that was definitely a dropped thread, which I feel was not developed. And I
Mm,
was waiting for it to happen because I felt like it just naturally should have happened.
yeah.
But
Having seen the movie before ever reading the book, there were a lot of
mhm.
things as I was going through the book that I was expecting to happen that just never happened.
Darn you, Hollywood. Darn you, Alan Glenn. Yeah, I agree, and I was waiting for that too. But it was I liked how they did that in the movie, where he just kind of as like a side backup. You know, pretty early, roughly, somewhat early on, he hires this pharmacy guy. He's like, "How about $2 million?"
Done.
and pays him off to reverse engineer this drug. And I think that is a great long term, backup plan if
Hmm.
it works, of course.
Which I feel like he had unlimited pills in the movie that he could actually, because he was like, if you can do it in six, I'll give you $2 million. If
Yeah.
he actually had enough pills apparently to get there.
Mm.
That's an interesting thought. It was only one pill per day in
Yeah.
the movie. They never went over one pill a day.
Oh yeah.
He
In the
never
book, he was like down in 2 and 3.
yeah, pretty regularly, and was building up tolerances to it and everything. So
Huh.
I guess a 6 month timeline was reasonable with the quantity of
Yeah.
pills that he had.
I also felt in the movie that Atwood, which is an older business guy that was doing the merger with him, he
Hmm.
was on NZT. That actually kind of took the place of the Detopia cult from the book. Was it Detopia?
I d-
The cult leader who was, unknowns to his students, he was giving them MDT through the
oh man,
cult.
I can't remember
Remember
the
that?
name of the cult, but you're
I think
right
it
on
was
track.
I think his last name was Deet or something like that. And so his cult was, his business enterprise was like Deetopia, something cheesy like that.
That's
Um,
clever
I
naming.
yeah, I love that in the book. That was so cool. But yeah, Atwood was on NCT and he died. I'm like, what? That's not in the book. It was weird because Atwood totally survives in the book and does the merger and everything like that.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I mean, Atwood in the book is like has been in business for 30 or 40 years,
mhm.
and in the movie, he's portrayed as only being in business for about two
Oh, an
years.
upstart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
an
like a
upstart.
super successful. That's right. I forgot
What's really
about
weird
that.
is he's an upstart, but he's in his. I mean, he looks like he's in maybe his mid late 50s or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's just a little bit of an like a disconnect there on me for the story. But it's stupid lawyer that lets him die. That one, I had some righteous indignation for Atwood on that one.
What a
Um,
jerk.
it's what a jerk. What a jerk. Again,
He keeps the
I
bills.
just come off of reading the book where Atwood does not die. And so
Right.
I'm going through this whole thing, like waiting for Atwood to reappear and become like this overarching enemy or something, and like take him out. And just doesn't happen that way. Does not
Hmm.
happen that way at all.
Yeah, and at the very end of the movie, we learn that Van Loon has purchased Iban Kimcor, which is the original developer of
Hmm.
NZT in the movie, and that was cool. That's not in the book, but I thought that was an intriguing little twist. And he tries to hold that over Eddie's head, but Eddie's too smart for that, and he doesn't put up with it in the movie. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm so past that. And now, do you believe him? Do you think he's a reliable narrator saying that he's not on the drug anymore? Because it seems a little bit up for debate.
So
Is he lying to Van Loon?
I think that he's telling the truth to Van Loon. I didn't have a reason to doubt it until you just brought it
Mhm.
up, but I had believed it pretty fully as he kind of predicted the car crash that had come
Yeah,
through, and
yeah.
I mean he's pretty quick. I mean, unless he retained like how many pills could you possibly have? Like to
Well, he's got and Van Loon says I shut down your lab this morning. He's like, I got 3 or 4 labs, potentially.
oh yeah.
I don't know if he's trying to scare Van Loon and intimidate him with lies, kind of bluffing him, but it could be true. I mean, it seems like at this point he could have other backup labs developing this stuff for himself.
That would be interesting.
So he could be on the drug, lying to Van Loon that he's not on the drug, and becomes president or senator or whatever.
I can
So
say that you don't see him taking a pill in that
yeah,
post scene. So
yeah,
I mean, I'm inclined to believe him. And I like to it's something I want to believe. You know what I mean?
hmm
It's a story point that I'm like, man, if he could get it on and get it to the stage where you can taper off of it and retain the effects of it. I mean, that is just like
yeah,
the quintessential perfect uh,
right.
resolution. Which, if you have this heightened sense of like intellect and processing and perfect recall, like you should have a plan like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that should be the end of the movie, is when he's gotten it to the point where he doesn't need to take it anymore.
I agree. So that's it for our just kind of briefly scanning through the movie and some things that we noticed that were good or bad or different. Now here's an interesting discussion I'm looking forward to having with you. And here's my question: if a film adaptation was perfect, word for word, scene for scene, like a perfect 1-to-1 adaptation, would we enjoy it as much? Would we then maybe complain that it was just like the book and it was boring? We knew it was going to happen. What do you think about that?
It's so difficult to even wrap my mind around this because it's never been done
Yeah.
ever in the history of the world. So I feel like, because we're in a place where it's never happened, I look
Mhm.
at it and it's so appealing and attractive to have this like perfect replication of what is an amazing book. But then there are some cases like Limitless, where really they made improvements to the story and
Yeah.
some of the plot points. So I'm not sure I would like a world where it's 1-to-1. Maybe like a 1 to a
Yeah.
1.1,
Well,
right?
yeah, my brain started rolling about this whole adaptation concept. And I was thinking, like, what if we lived in the reverse? What if we lived in some alternate world? Okay, Earth 2, where, assuming we're on Earth 1, and so in Earth 2, the film industry in that world makes perfect replicas of all movies. And I wonder if those people of Earth 2 would then say, "Man, every time I watch a movie, it's just like the book. I already know what's going to happen. It's not exciting anymore."
I wish they'd
And
make some
that
changes.
yeah, exactly. Come on, be creative, guys. Can't you change anything? Can you do something new? Are you not creative enough?
Those hacks in
Um,
Hollywood, they don't have any imagination.
wow. See, that kind of mindset, I love to have the flip flop or the reverse of what reality is sometimes, because it makes me think on what I'm going through in a different way.
Hmm.
Because we complain that they're being too creative. We're like, why are we complaining about this?
We need to quell creative licensing.
Yeah. Do you realize what you're saying, people? And,
Yeah.
I used to be always on the bandwagon of, if there's any change, I'm going to, harp on it. I'm going to rant about it. And I'm going to like just totally trash a movie because it wasn't like the book. Like that's some kind of creative crime. But I mean, they paid copyright royalties. It's not illegal what they're doing. It's
Hmm.
actually a creative process. Like it's kind of like when someone covers a song. It's their own style. It's a different band, different singer, and they're doing it legally. It's totally fine to do that. That's what creative media is all about. Is the well, not all about, but one of the things it's about is reinterpretation and it changing over time.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of grown okay with changed film adaptations and appreciating why and how and the changes like that we've talked
I
about.
just, for me, as long as it's a good adaptation, I share
Sure,
that
there's
view
plenty of
with
bad
you.
ones.
The moment it's a
Yeah.
bad adaptation, I'll respectfully disagree.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
get that.
I think the adaptation that I'm totally okay with,
Mhm.
and I'm okay with, is the ones that do improve the story, of course, where there's these, maybe plot holes or loose ends that they've tied up neatly. The
Mhm.
ones I'm not okay with are the minute changes, like the 500 to 800 on the cost of
And
MDT.
Eddie's last name, which
And
doesn't do
yeah,
anything.
nothing changed. You just wanted to make a change for no reason. And
Yeah.
that kind of stuff drives me a little bit crazy. The other one that maybe I'm sort of not okay with is when they do not follow the description of somebody or something, where there's like a
Mm.
big major piece and it's described as green, and then in the movie it's red. You're like,
Yeah.
no, you got it
What is it?
wrong.
That you had one job.
You had one job.
That one time you had one job.
Uh, so I do like it though. I like the creative side of it, and I like that, especially in this case where Alan came back on doing the adaptation, making some of those corrections was really,
Hmm.
really cool. So I would really like to see more authors participating in the
Yeah.
adaptation of their books.
Yeah, totally. Like with Ready Player One, the author of that pretty much was one of the writers. I think
That's
second or
awesome.
third. There was maybe two or three, but he was in there, and he did a lot of the adaptation. Probably helped write, keep the characters in character, and Now they had to change a lot of stuff due to legal rights because there's so many copywritten things in the book
Oh
of
yeah.
Ready Player One. So that I'm sure that upset them a lot. They had to change things a lot. But anyway, that was great to see Ernest Cline involved in the big budget adaptation of his book. And I agree. And I feel less upset when it's the author changing his own story. I'm like, hey, he wrote it.
Yeah.
It's his baby. Maybe this is like a second chance. Like I said earlier, you know, he's like, maybe when he finished the book a few years later, he's thinking, you know, maybe Eddie shouldn't have committed suicide. Maybe he should have reverse engineered this thing and made more and we're in for Senate.
Maybe
And
if he
then-
wasn't an idiot, he'd done it better.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a genius, so why was he an idiot? And then the movie comes out, and he's like, "Oh," he starts rubbing his hands together. I'm getting my chance.
Yes. He's probably written like 14 different versions of
Oh, no.
Limitless after all
He's
these
just-
years. He's like, all the mistakes I made.
He's just living in like a dark, damp like closet, just rewriting this continually. He's like, I'll make it better this time.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
It's sad.
That's a dark image. All right.
Yes. Very sad. All right, that's like Twilight Zone stuff right there.
Yeah. We've gone to the underneath. Is that what it's called?
Mhm. Upside down.
The upside down. That's it. Yep.
The underneath. Oh my gosh, are you excited about season 3?
Okay,
Stranger
I'm
Things.
going to shoot straight with you. I really, really, really loved season 1 and got really bored watching the first episode of season 2. And I didn't
Oh, wow.
finish it. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those that I really need to go back and give it a fair shot again.
You should.
But yeah, I just, for whatever reason, wasn't really getting into it.
Well, after I finish binging season 3 in one day, maybe we can do a season 3 review episode. It'd be fun.
That would be good. Yeah, I'd be on board for it, and I definitely want to. I want to get there. I want to listen. I want to read it. I want to watch it. I want to listen to it. What do you do with movies?
Watch. I'm pretty sure. I mean, unless you're blind. Hey, there actually are novels. Did you know that there's Stranger Things prequel novels? There's 2 of them that I know of.
At the front door,
Um,
like official
yeah,
canon.
one of them has to do with Eleven's mother, who remember was like drugged out of her mind.
Mm-hmm.
So there's her story in an insane asylum, I think, ish. I might be wrong about that part. And there's another one. I forgot what the other one's about. So
That's
pretty
cool that they're kind of expanding the universe under different
It's
mediums.
genius.
I like that.
They're pulling a Star Wars, which like all franchises should do that. I wish Avengers and Marvel did that.
That would be
How cool would it be to have like an in-between book about Thanos? Well, there actually is a novel about Thanos, which I'd love to read. But
Wouldn't it
man,
be?
they're
Oh
missing
wait, they
out
did
on
that.
some. Yeah, that's the one thing they have done. There's so many books they could have done, and that would make them say, "Hey, we don't have to make a movie about it. We got a book."
I wonder if they feel like they've already done that with the comics.
Maybe, but I mean, a novel is so much different and better than a comic as far as detailed storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I
know.
agree.
I would totally listen to some Avengers books.
That'd be pretty cool.
Even DC. Okay, I'll even listen to some DC books if there's a good one.
Don't
out there,
stretch
but
it. Don't
I don't
stretch
think.
it.
I don't think there are.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of books, let's bring it back. So let's talk about some other variations in the plot that came up, and maybe we can kind of say, yeah, I liked what they did with the book or movie, sort of what we did previously, but there are some a little more detailed things. I noticed that in the movie they added a girlfriend love interest, Lindy.
Yeah, can we talk about that Lindy character? Why is she there?
Because you gotta have a hot girlfriend in a movie.
Is that it? Is that all there is? Is there any other reason? Can you think of any reason?
She kind of pulls him through, and there's that cool action scene where she gets the drugs. There's no sex, so that's not that reason.
Yeah, right? Goodness.
He had sex with somebody else, but not his girlfriend. I was really turned off by when Lindy comes back to him when he's all cleaned up and handsome and like successful.
Yeah.
Did you catch on to that?
I was in the same exact boat, but I feel like the dynamics between the two of them, it was him trying to get her back, even though she was into it because he was all cleaned up. I feel like it was him that initiated it. So in that way, I justified it in my mind. But I had the same exact initial like knee jerk. I was like, "Oh, you
My
gold
girl."
digger."
Yeah, totally. But you're right. He wanted her. He wanted to show himself off. Like, hey, look at me. I'm like stable. I'm
I'm responsible. Something.
Yeah.
I noticed that there was zero because they introduced the girlfriend element. There was no pining after Melissa in the book.
Yeah.
You had so many scenes where like he like was daydreaming
call her.
about Melissa during like a business meeting. and kind of had to like NZT himself back into the room. And
Yeah.
you don't have anything like that.
Keeps talking about her raven black hair and her body. I'm like, dude, this guy misses his ex-wife. I felt bad for him.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, not in the movie.
Not in the movie.
He's good.
He's got a blonde girlfriend in the movie.
He's totally over her.
Yeah. Forget the raven black hair.
Yep. They also, of course, they added Atwood. Well, Atwood was in the book, but they changed kind of the deal with his NCT. Yeah, I mean, like he's successful because of NZT in the movie, but in the book, he's just like
a good businessman.
An upstart. Yeah,
and it kind of replaces the pharma lab conspiracy. They kind of swap the two of them out, and I don't know if that was something that like Alan just didn't like the pharma lab, because I kind of felt like the pharma conspiracy was tacked on, because in no part in like the first 10 chapters or however many, I can't remember how many chapters there are because the audiobook is in parts. But in the first like majority of the book, there is almost no mention or any hint of a conspiracy with the pharma company. It's really just Ganazzi and his, the Russian mob and stuff. And then out of nowhere, they steal his supply back, and it's the pharma, and then the president's got the engorged NZT eyes, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
like, what? Where did that even come from?
Bush is on NZT. Was it Bush in the movie? Or who was the president? Maybe Clinton. I mean, they didn't say, but the time era. Who was the president in the 90s?
It was Clinton. It was that Clinton guy.
Oh, that dude.
See, it's not believable that he's on NZT because he made too many stupid mistakes and got impeached. So.
I did not take NZT. Sorry, MDT.
That was really good.
In the Oval Office. I've been waiting to bust out my Clinton impersonation for years.
I'm glad you've been saving it for so long.
Did you know Bill Clinton played saxophone?
I did not.
Now you know.
Thank you.
Moving on. Where was I? Yeah, so they definitely downplayed the pharma stuff. I loved in the book where they started diving back into the decades of where this drug came from, and they went back to like the 60s, and this was like a military thing, branched off of MK Ultra. Even they brought up an MK Ultra. Whoa. Yeah, and I love prequel stuff. Like I love prequels, and they go back and kind of explain the mythos with new story and new characters. Yeah. And so anything prequel-y, like even the Star Wars prequels, I love what they do for backing up the stuff we know and love from the old movies.
Absolutely.
So when they start going back in the decades into MK Ultra and military cover-ups and like failed projects that made people go crazy and kill themselves, I'm like, oh, this is some juicy storytelling here. I like this stuff.
I think the sequel book is set to... I think it's set in the 50s is where it was going to be set on like the early half of it. But then, it talks about prequel and sequel. So who knows where the future stuff will be.
Yeah, maybe half and half or flashbacks or something.
That'd be pretty cool.
Also, the movie, it had to have a sex scene. It just had to for ratings. So that happened. There was no, I think there was an implied sex scene in the book. Like he wakes up with someone and they're like, did they? I don't know.
There was no detail. There was definitely no detail on it. It was just kind of, I feel like a waking up with somebody. And I kind of was like surprised with the whole landlord's wife thing, just right off the bat, because it really, again, took me off guard. I just read the book, so I wasn't expecting anything like that. And it just kind of came out of nowhere and really felt just tacked on. Just here, because this is a Hollywood movie, we have to have our obligatory sex scene, and definitely didn't feel like it was necessary or part of the movie or anything like that. It really felt just added on.
I like the except for the sex part. I like the scene before that where he's in the stairwell, the stair area, and she's just telling him off, and then the drug kicks in for the first time, and he's just like zoning out. She's still going at it. I mean, she's insulting him for a good 2 minutes straight.
Yeah. She's got like a whole lot of stuff like lined up and ready to go for him.
Yeah, she's got a little list of insults and cuss words to use.
We were kind of talking about it before, where in the book there's not a whole lot of like super good, vivid descriptions on what NZT is doing. And I love the way that they bring it to light, and how he's noticing, like in the book, it might say, and he, noticed all of like these finite little details, and he noticed everything that was going on. And in the movie, you see that, and it really comes to life really, really
zooming
well.
in on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he sees like a little bit of the book cover and he remembers what the book cover is and what the book contains. And then he can notice like her emotions and he's kind of reading her like a mentalist.
Mm-hmm.
He can tell she's upset about something personal. So he kind of attacks that problem in a weird way that throws her off. And then he's able to actually help her. And I like that, the psychology of that scene. I think that would be totally something that someone might be able to do if they had this kind of drug, is to really break down the barriers of other people and help them get past something or,
That'd be a very altruistic way to
Yeah,
utilize NZT.
yeah. So while we're talking about the visual of him on the drug, let's real quick talk about some of the VFX that they do in the movie. So the main thing that I loved was the infinite zoom. I love it and I hate it. It's hard to watch solid. Like I have to look away
Yeah.
a few times because it's just so long and so much visual. It hurts.
We really should have timed it to see exactly how long those zooms are. 'Cause
So
I
long.
feel like it's a solid 3 minutes in the opening because
Yeah.
it's like it's instead of like a normal opening, like they're just like walking down the street and city shots
Mhm.
and coming from the blimp and all that, like just in replacement of all those normal shots in a movie from the mid 2000s, you've got this just constant zoom effect, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of vertigo.
Yeah. So the way that they shot this was they had three cameras mounted right side by side on a single tripod, and the three cameras had different lenses on them. Same camera body, different lenses, and the lenses were something to the equivalent of a wide angle lens, so maybe a 35 millimeter or 16 millimeter, which can capture quite a bit of the scene in front of you
Mhm.
in a wide angle. And then they'd have a medium lens, maybe a 50 millimeter or 85, and then they had a zoom lens, probably a 100 or 200 millimeter lens. It would be zoomed in very far away. So they would record simultaneously with all three views side by side. So there'd be minimal perspective shifting because the sensors are right next to each other. And then they would take those three shots and they would overlay them on top of each other. So they would get that zoomed in shot and put it real small in the middle. Then they get the medium shot and put that, expanded a little bit bigger,
Mhm.
maybe half as big as a full frame. And then the wide angle shot fills up the entire frame. So they can digitally in the computer expand all the video frames and zoom in as the videos play, which are in sync with each other. And they can zoom in from the wide angle into the medium, and then even more, they're zooming in more to the zoomed in camera,
Yikes.
while never really enhancing any pixels to the point where you can notice that they're upscaling or enlarging the pixels, because we always have a full resolution video right in the center that's expanding towards you. So that was just how they did one. They would do one block like that. They would record maybe 30 seconds. Then they would go to the next block, set up their tripod, hit record for 30 more seconds, and hit stop. And then they'd go to the next block, and they did that in different locations down in New York. And then they pieced them all together and did an infinite zoom across all three cameras. So it'd be like wide, medium, tight, and then the tight would be full screen. And in the middle of that now would be the next block, wide, medium, tight. And it would just keep zooming through
Mm.
all the camera shots that they took. Very creative and relatively simple. Like I can do this in After Effects. There's a tutorial online that you can do it.
So why would you do it though? Seems like a lot of work for what it is.
Well, you can't do it practically. You can't literally move a camera dolly down the street and get that effect.
Hmm.
You could. It would just be a traveling camera, just like a camera on top of a car, but it doesn't have that drug, ethereal, just mind-bending look. And the impression I got was that the infinite zoom, it happens in the movie, I think one or two times, and it's actually him blacking out. So in the book, he just blacks out and then unblacks out. He comes back
Hmm.
in the next location. But in the movie, the zoom happens. He's like zooming downtown. He's not really conscious. It's just visually showing you
Yeah.
that he just went on a wild ride doing who knows what downtown New York. Then he comes to at the end of the zoom and he's like, oh, what? Where am I?
All right. I like that
So-
explanation because I was just thinking they really liked that.
Just for fun.
So, like just for fun, we're gonna stick that in there. But I like that it actually ties in somehow, one way or the other. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, and like I said, it's in the movie, so that's how I'm making that connection, is because he does black out, and then the zoom happens, and then he comes to.
Nice.
So there's that. There's another really trippy effect when I think he's getting his hair cut, and there's like infinite copies of himself in the mirror.
Yeah.
That was really wild. I think for that they just, instead of having a mirror there, they just had green, and then because they can cut out green with chroma key, which is like erasing a part of the photo. They were able to put copies smaller and smaller and smaller in the background, and then they moved them around and did some weird stuff.
Trippy.
So it looks like the camera is zooming through mirrors and reflections of reflections.
Yep.
And then the other sequence they did early on when he's seeing the patterns in the stock exchange, he looks up at the ceiling and all the tiles flip into numbers.
That's
That
like
was
my
really well
favorite
done
part.
too.
Yeah, they did really good on that.
It's perfect. Yeah, so even though this was 2010, I mean, there was good VFX at 2010, but they just did a really great job with these very creative effects I've never seen done anywhere else.
The Van Loon in the movie definitely had like kind of a strong manish, just like intimidation factor. And there was little to no relationship at all, no relationship building. I actually really liked the book version of Van Loon, where they actually spent time together in ways that they could build a personal relationship. And I feel like by the end of the book, Van Loon actually cared about, to some degree, cared about Eddie. I thought that added a really cool layer. And when I got to the book, reading it, I was like, man, I don't remember that at all in the movie. And I went back and watched the movie. I was like, it wasn't there at all. They completely cut out the entire relationship side for them.
And he was basically acting like Robert De Niro.
Yeah. Robert De Niro as himself.
Yeah. What is it with the quote unquote best actors act the least? They just act like themselves, and it fits a wide variety of characters, and people love it.
Wild.
But like sometimes when you analyze what they're doing, they're really just kind of being like themselves. And this was with some variation, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Not saying they're not good actors, but
like in another movie, he might just be himself with a little bit more, affection or a little bit more fatherly. Versus I'm
a little tweak.
I'm Robert De Niro, but I'm being a little bit strong and hard in this movie, but I'm still me. I'm still being true to Robert De Niro, and you know what? I respect that.
I feel like that is true for so many A-list actors.
I wonder if that's the key.
Kind of strange.
That's the key to being a good actor, is to just be yourself.
Yeah. Whoa, that sounds so cheesy and self-helpy.
Whoa.
But
yeah.
Just be yourself.
Your dreams can come true.
So for some reason, they changed the limp and injury from his ankle to his knee. And they choreographed the fight scene, of course, which I like the fight scene.
It was pretty cool.
But his injury was different. It was strange. But I did like the fight scene. Although I expected him to fight a little bit better. But it was still fun to see some action down in the subway.
I would have...
Because he came to and he's like, whoa, there's guys around me. I'm fighting.
Yeah. I would have really appreciated a little bit more if you've seen Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., where he kind of like pause frames and he's analyzing and dissecting what he's about to do and then goes into it.
Yes.
Not exactly what they did in that. I don't want something copy and pasted, but in that vein, where because he's got the processing power of a god, he should be able to essentially slow down
Sherlock
time.
Holmes.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the processing power of Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes is on NZT. Yeah. It's official.
Hey, that makes so much more sense.
It does.
It was available in the 1800s, apparently.
As is Batman. Sorry. No, I agree. That would have been cool if we got something similar where he was able to zoom in and pan around kind of outside of his own perspective and analyze things that were about to happen or why they're happening.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Well, we get little hints.
You definitely see that even at the very end of the movie where he's predicting that the car is going to crash. There's just so many factors pointing to it that it's an inevitability. I feel like he definitely could have done that during a fight scene with something moving, much slower than a moving vehicle.
Did you feel like Eddie in the movie was a bit of a Mary Sue? In other words, he could face anything that came his way, never doubted himself, never failed. Did you feel like he was a little too hyperpowered?
There was a little bit of that for me. Yeah, the book Eddie had much more self-doubt. You obviously you could get in his head a lot better, but there were doubts even while he was on NZT. There was no illusion of invincibility at any point. And in the book, or in the movie, I'm sorry, there was almost all the time you had this feeling of nothing bad can happen.
I think he says he's invincible.
Yeah.
Doesn't he say I'm invincible or something?
He equates himself to a god, I think, in that scene where they're doing like he's got all the rapt attention of everyone in the bars. He kind of felt like a god, and I was like, that's really the feeling you get the whole way through the movie. And I think the way that it's portrayed in the movie, you just get a lot more of that like invincibility. You're more than just heightened intellect. It's the instant recall. It's the seeing everything. It's correlating everything and making you, essentially impervious.
He's got like a crazy wall in his head with red string connecting all the paper clippings.
Yeah.
I see it. I see it all coming together. If you had NZT/MDT, why did they change? Why did they change the drug name?
I don't know. I think NZT
That probably annoys you too, huh?
That does. It is on my list of things that annoys me.
It would.
You know what the other thing that annoys me is? In the book he uses $50 bills, and in the movie it's $100 bills. There's no reason for that. But the NZT, I think this one is, I gotta chalk it up to the Hollywood guys that are like, you know, it sounds a little bit more edgy than MDT and ZT.
Z's.
So cool.
Z's are in this year.
Yeah, it's 2011. Need some Z's.
MDT sounds like a pesticide, honestly, to me, though. Like, I need to spray some MDT in my yard. Gets rid of the ants. But NZT is like an edgy street drug.
Yeah, edgy street drug. That's NZT. It does. It screams edgy street drug. I'm on board with that.
And they rebranded, you know? They got to bring it into 2010. 2011,
gotta keep
whatever.
it relatable, you know?
Yeah, to the kids. Yeah. No, if you had MDT/NZT, what would you do? What is there a career path you do? Is there a problem you'd try to solve? Have you thought about that?
You know,
let's bring it on you.
Yeah, that's it's a little bit of a surprise question here. I got you with one earlier. I feel like there are a lot of problems and solutions in the world that are right on the tip of some, like, okay, this is a silly one, but it's in my mind. You can use momentum to generate energy. Like, have you ever been on a kinetic kids playground, kinesthetics one, where like there's that twirly thing and you get on the twirly thing and you don't have to move, you just have to hold on and it just keeps going. It just keeps going and going and going and going, and all I'm doing is holding on. I'm like, okay, if I can do this on a kinesthetic playground for elementary school students, surely there's a way to harness this power and generate, you know, essentially unlimited electricity and power across the world. So I feel like there are
You're getting dangerously close to the infinite machine.
I know, right? So there are some like world problems that like pop into my mind occasionally like that. That I feel like I would be able to tackle with NZT.
Man, I'm thinking totally selfishly.
Well, don't get me wrong. I would profit from fixing the world problem, but I would fix the world problem while I'm at it, because I'm on an NZT. I can do both. Am I right?
Yeah, you can.
Am I right?
Yeah. I would honestly, I love the fact that he's writing a science fiction book in the science fiction story. It's very meta.
How often is that people write books in books? I feel like that happens a lot.
It's a trope. Authors love authors. Yeah. They love authoring.
It's amazing.
It's their life. They're like, I got to put it in a book. It's never been done before.
I've got this other idea for a book that I'm going to have my author inside of my book write a book about.
Oh my gosh. They're writing on behalf of their fictional author. I've actually got a really crazy dream I had about that, which I would love to turn into a short story about an author who dreams about someone, and he goes into the dream world, and that author is writing about himself or the real world self.
Yes.
It's very confusing. But I noticed that in Brandon Sanderson's books, at least 2 of his major trilogies and series have books in the books.
Yes. Yeah.
Like The Way of Kings is literally about, that's the name of a book in the book world. Is The Way of Kings is the name of a book that the king has.
It's a book about a book. That's so good.
And then in Mistborn, every chapter opens with a quote from this book, who's from the emperor, and that's a book. It's like a book about a book. It's so strange. What's going on, Brandon Sanderson?
And other authors.
Those books.
I like it.
And others.
I like it, though.
Yeah.
I think
Lord of the Rings. Remember, we discussed this in Mistborn episode, which was a great one. But Lord of the Rings, it has a book in it.
Yep.
There and Back Again. I think is what Bilbo called it, right? Or just his adventures?
Yeah, There and Back Again. A Hobbit's Tale. There and Back Again by Bilbo Baggins.
Thank you. Thank you for proper accreditation.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Bilbo.
So what I would do with it, man, I am not a gambling person, but I love the fact that you could use it to what do they call it? Work the numbers with the cards and
counting cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely a way you could make some quick money. I love the idea of using it for science and piecing together problems that maybe cross disciplines of science, and you will be able to bring those together and connect the dots and find a solution for something. Fixing humanitarian problems, of course, would be really great too, if you were able to just kind of take in all the information somehow and then get in the middle of it and have the resources to make a solution. That would probably be the limiting factor, is what could you actually do based on money and influence? You could have the great idea, but can you actually go and enact it in the world? You may not be able to.
With NZT, you totally could, right? After you've accumulated your millions by gambling and counting cards, which actually drives me kind of crazy.
And lotto.
That Eddie doesn't do that. Like in the book or in the movie, he actually goes to the casino and he wins a little bit, but he doesn't like use that as his primary method. And it kind of just blows my mind. Because I'm thinking of like if people walk away with, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars a night. He didn't need to get a $100,000 loan. He could he could be walking away with tens of thousands every night and have done that in less than a week. So
totally.
Come on, Eddie.
Yeah. Come on, man. Go with the program here.
Get with the program.
There is a dude who learned the patterns of a game show machine that was like this. I think it was a 60s or 70s game show, one of the very early game shows. And they used this electronic game device that would like blinking lights would land on a certain spot. And he learned that there was a pattern. There was 5 different patterns where the lights would blink. And so once he learned this pattern, he actually got on the game show as a contestant, and he knew where the light was going to stop based on the pattern. So he gamed the system just by sheer intelligence and noticing patterns. So I'm thinking like you could probably use that for lotto tickets, which there have been flukes and lotto ticket numbers where you can actually like know the likelihood of a winning ticket number, weird stuff like that. You could probably find some quirks and some money making systems like that to make some easy money to, go out and do something good with it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Instead of just sit fat and happy, but actually go use it. I like your ideas too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And while you're on NZT, we learn in the book and the movie, I think they stick pretty true to this, is you cannot sit still. You cannot do nothing. You
gotta clean.
Yeah. This is a pill for being more anal retentive, and you will go do stuff immediately.
I have NZT moments. Sometimes I come home, I have all this energy, the kids and wife are gone, and the house is a mess. I'm like, you know what? No one's going to clean this house except for me. It's all up to me. And I just like go like, I call it hurricane cleaning. I'm just like zooming around room to room. I grab 5 things from the living room, and on my way to put it away in the bedroom, I'm cleaning up things along the way through the kitchen and then drop off the 5 things. I just like, it gets crazy, but it's like super fast and like hyper OCD cleaning. Just like a burst. It only lasts for like an hour.
Yep. That's what I do with
and it drives my wife crazy.
That's what I do with household projects. It's the fits of inspiration, and while the motivation is there, you got to strike. It doesn't matter how inconvenient the timing is. If I'm ready to go build the thing or fix the door, I mean, it's now or it's not going to get done. You have to do it now. And my wife is still learning that about me. We're working on it.
My wife, what drives her crazy, she says, that's not how you clean, honey. You stay in one room, you clean that one room. I'm like, well, yeah, to clean it, I got to take these toys to the kids' room. But when I took it to the kids' room, I noticed their bed sheets were off, and I fixed that. And then through the hallway, there were some clothes there. I put that in the laundry, I can't stay in one room. It's all connected.
Absolutely.
Now tell me this, when you were reading the book, just because it's a little more involved and more in your head than in a movie, naturally, just different pieces of art. I'm having a hard time saying a book is better than a movie because it's just a different animal.
Sure.
But just food for thought. But anyway, while you were reading the book, did you stop and you use your imagination to say, if I were on NZT right now, what would I be noticing? Did you ever have like a fake NZT moment while reading?
No.
I did. Man. I'm a kid at heart. I'm just like my imagination. I'm looking around. I'm like, whoa, what if I was on NZT? Like, would I notice like the pattern of the fly's wings beating over there, and like the dust over there, and I don't know, like.
I definitely had like the Jedi moment, and I relate this to my childhood because every time we watched Star Wars, we'd go play Jedi afterwards. So when I was done watching Limitless or reading the book, I'm heightened awareness, and I'm like quote unquote noticing more things because I'm just like intentionally noticing it. But it's definitely after the fact. I didn't like do this, like pause what I was doing and be like testing my NZT skills. It was like while I was driving, I was noticing every single car driving by.
finding hidden codes in their license plates. Decoding people's license plates.
Oh my god.
And I feel like some people on the more paranoid conspiracy theory side of things, they are always finding patterns that aren't really
That
there.
aren't there. That's the key.
I'm like, you need to chill out. Just because the number 6 is on this product does not mean it's of Satan.
Right. Right.
Oh boy. With that, I'm going to save the conspiracy theory mess for another episode because that's definitely another one. And I think another episode that would be fun to do would be the best or maybe worst book to movie adaptations. What do you think?
That would be entertaining. I would be up for that.
Yep. Lord of the Rings, I think, would be on one of the best ones, and The Hobbit on one of the worst.
No. I would be on the opposite side of that where I loved The Hobbit.
What?
I really thought they did pretty good.
Well, I'm going to store that idea for another time.
Yeah,
but I think that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much, Daniel, for listening to the book in 2 days, I think. It took you 2 days?
2 days.
3 days?
Yep. And then I watched the movie and then listened to the book again the next day.
Jeez, what? You are a machine. It took me like 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks to go through the book.
Oh no.
But
you gotta get on my level.
I only listen when I drive. I can't listen if I'm doing anything else. Just doesn't work.
To be fair,
So-
you did remember a couple of details that I missed. So there is something to be said about listening when you have the attention to listen. So I get that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much
Yep.
for having me on. Always a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it.
Yep. Awesome. Well, same. Great. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'd love to hear y'all's feedback on the movie, on the book, on the movie and the book. If you've read the sequel, let us know if it's good or not, because we're definitely going to be all over that this week. But yeah, thanks again for listening. And if you'd like to give any kind of feedback to us, you can email us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Or we would love it if you also commented on any of our social media posts and let us know what you thought about the episode or the book or the movie. All right. Well, thanks for listening and have a great week.
And as we'll get into a little bit down the wow, I can talk. Hang on. Stop.